Thank you all for joining us for the How to Prepare for an Academic Job Talk workshop. Joining us today are Dr. Jana Dufek, Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, Dr. Levent Atici, Executive Director of Undergraduate Research, Dr. Sarah Jordan, Program Director for Couple and Family Therapy, and Dr. Jeremy Uska, Director of Educational Effectiveness. They're going to be answering your questions about how to prepare for an academic job talk. So I'm going to hand it over to them for introductions, and then we will begin taking questions. Janet, do you want to get us started?
Absolutely. Okay. First of all, as Nev said, my name is Janet Dufek. I'm 3 days into a new role at Vice Provost of Faculty Affairs. I'm also finishing up my transition as Program Director for the Interdisciplinary Health Sciences PhD program. I'm glad to see a couple of my students are attending this session. And I also see many names of students that have attended other sessions. I'd like to commend you for taking the time to be here today during, still winter break. So I look forward to addressing any questions and working with my colleagues on the panel. So welcome.
Thank you. Sarah?
Trying to get my mic on, sorry there. Yes, I'm Sarah Jordan. I'm the Program Director for Couple and Family Therapy, and I'm glad that you all are here today.
Thank you. Levent?
Greetings, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks, Nev and Valerie, for the invitation. I appreciate it. My name is Levent Atici. I'm a professor of anthropology and also executive director of undergrad research at UNLV. And also, I look forward to productive discussion and many dialogues among everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. And Jeremy?
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Huska. I'm an alum of UNLV Experimental Psych back in 2010. After that, I got into a tenure track teaching position, found my way into administration and interviews in different contexts. So happy to share some experiences with y'all.
Thank you, everyone. So while everyone is thinking about what questions to ask our panel, let's get started with the basics. How important is the job talk, the academic job talk?
I'll start. It is critical. It's your time to demonstrate your preparedness, your fit match, the unique skills and talents that you have, and why you should stand out to the search committee and the faculty that you're interested in joining. I could go on, but I'll let my colleagues add to that.
And I would add that when you think about the job talk, I guess I'm thinking about face-to-face interviews, but it's not just the time when you are presenting your materials. It's the drive to the airport, it's the meals, it's all of that is the interview. And so all of that is important. I know we've had candidates, I've met with candidates at this position in my former university where the talk may have gone really well, but then we get down to dinner and we start talking about something and it's just very, you get more information, right? So you want to be very aware of that you're always on during an interview.
Very nice. Yeah, I agree that it's crucial and also consequential. And I also agree with Sarah that this is almost like personal, right? Get to know me, put a face. And I also call this like a likability test because people are not going to only look into your academic credentials, but also, as a neighbor, right? Sharing the next office, as someone who's going to socialize at department parties, like within the college setting, within the larger setting. They're going to want to make sure that, you're not crazy, right? And you're likable, you're hireable, and again, you're open to the critiques of undergraduate students, graduate students, departmental colleagues, college, university, all the admin. So it's really, really, really important. One of the maybe top 2 or 3 important aspects for your career development.
Agree with all that's been said. I'll just mention also it's an opportunity to also show your teaching chops. Those of you who are thinking about teaching institutions, non-R1s, you don't force it, but as your research comes through and your personality comes through, I think it's also another information piece for the search committee. So again, it's not just the job talk. It's not just the dinner and all the informal. It's everything. So it's something to prepare for and be yourself in and put an authentic foot forward.
Thank you all. So we already have a question in our chat here. It says, I'm worried about ageism in my job search. I'm a non-traditional student getting my BA in 2016, my MA in 2019, and PhD planned for 2023. I will be 57 when I finally finish. I'm worried that while my CV is outstanding with publications and teaching experience, I will be passed over for tenure positions because of my age. Can you comment on these concerns and how I might position myself for hire?
I'll take that one because of my current role. It's illegal, right? Ageism is illegal. So you cannot be asked questions about age, nor should you ask anyone about their opinions on this. This should not be an issue. You should not concentrate on that. Go back to what you heard the panelists say earlier. It's your time to shine. That's what you need to focus on. So put that worry aside. It's not a worry. Well, I understand you could feel it as a worry. Go ahead, Sarah. I can see.
It takes me forever to get my mute. Yes, Janet is absolutely correct, but I could still understand, people have biases, right? And so even though it is illegal, I could understand where that would be your concern. I guess my advice or my 2 cents would be focusing on all the strengths that you have. So because you're non-traditional and you have a solid CV, that's excellent. And I would just embrace that about yourself. And I would talk about those experiences because that's what really matters. And I think if for your own, like going into the interview and thinking what could be helpful for you, if you just focus on everything that you have to offer, that's where I would put my energy and focus if I were you in that position interviewing for that job.
Yeah, I echo most of what's been said, and also my philosophy in life in general. I don't want to worry about things that I can't control. Right? It's illegal. You should focus on your strengths. But I also, to put your maybe mind on ease, I've also seen many instances in which actually non-traditional people were hired. So it's not all like bad or negative. So again, just focus on your thing and just don't worry about that. Don't even think about it.
Agree. Definitely perceive it as a differentiator and a strength that you can leverage.
And just to add on to that, you could think about the flip side of the coin. Being a female going into academic position, a lot of women early in their career or earlier in life applying for a job worry about discrimination based on if they have a family or if they plan to have a family. So I think they're at different life stages, there are different things that we might perceive as potential discrimination factors. So again, I would just focus on what you have to bring to the job.
Thank you all. So as we start to plan and prepare for an academic job talk, what are some of the first things we should start thinking about?
I didn't want to go first this time. Jeremy, why don't you start?
Sure. Instead of being last all the time, thanks. I would just say, regardless of the type of institution or a Carnegie classification, I think one of the things to convey is that it's a program of research. Even if your dissertation is your only research project, where are you going next, et cetera, because at certain types of institutions, they want to be able to get students involved in research, and we need to see that this is a progression, right? And of course, different types of institutions are going to look at how grantable is it? How does this research fit in with existing strengths and so on? So I'm sure my colleagues have some more on that.
So I'll go second. I would like to remind everyone one straight fact. If you are in a position to give a job talk, that's good news, right? Why? Because you went through the process, submitted your application, long list, short list, and they liked you. They acknowledge, recognize your credentials. Okay, so be confident because you already know that they want you, right? Why? Because out of 200, 300 right, applicants, they invited you to their campus, right, to give a job talk. So in that regard, just make sure that you can actually present your best self, checking boxes on multiple fronts, right? Present your teacher self, right? Present your colleague, human being self, best self. Present your graduate advisor sense, right? Present your like next door neighbor self. So just make sure that you can actually demonstrate all of these, like all the synergies, your fitness into the department's teaching and learning agenda, right? If you're bringing a lab, right? All the potential for recruiting graduate students, developing new courses. So just think about that stuff and maybe forget about your dissertation for a minute, okay? Because they want to see what your dissertation, of course, it's important, but now it's your past, right? Because what they want to see, what are you bringing into that academic department for the next at least 5 years if it's tenure track, right? In terms of teaching, research, service, synergies, field work, graduate student recruitment, undergraduate education, all of those things. So that's what I would think, and I would find ways to incorporate those things into my job talk, because most people just focus on the dissertation results or research, but I think it would be wise for you to just find smart ways, like clever ways to incorporate those points into your talk to just close all the loopholes.
I think those are all great pieces of advice and information. I would add another piece is that it's about fit. So like it was already mentioned, by the time you get to the interview, they're already very interested in you. And usually there's just a few candidates. And it really is about who's the best fit for the position. So be yourself, because you're interviewing them too, right? So, and it's about the best fit. So there could be 3 outstanding candidates, but one might just be a better fit for the position. So if you don't get the job, I guess what I'm saying also, it's not about your qualifications or any experience because you made it to the interview. That's a huge piece. It's about what's the best fit for the program, or that, the department that you're interviewing for. So I would keep that in mind as well. And long term, they're investing in you. So they want to say, what is our best investment for the new faculty member? Who's going to give us longevity? Who's going to have a focus and a vision for this? What, like was said, what are you bringing to, not just what you've done, but what are you bringing to the program?
So my colleagues have hit on all cylinders here, but I'll twist this just a little bit. You probably have made an application to a particular program or institution because you want to be there. It's something about this program, this place, maybe it's the part of the world it's in, who knows? So you want something from the institution. What I would challenge you to think about and to try to weave in is to convey what you can give to the institution. And that really hits on Dr. Gordon's piece. That's another faculty member. I'm dealing with something else. Dr. Jordan's piece about that long-term investment and all of those sorts of things. So you want to think about this as a two-way street. Obviously, you want to get something professionally from the group and the colleagues in the institution. But what is it that you can provide to them that's unique and is that fit and that match? So that's what I have to add. And you can see how well trained we are as panelists. We went 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we went 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'll bet you, you'll see that again, right?
Thanks for switching it up for everyone. So for our next question, it is, do you always need a slide deck? And what suggestions do you have if I use one? Is it good to have supplementary slides? Do things like color scheme and consistent font style and size matter?
Yeah, I think it's pretty standard that you have of the formatting, what type of slide deck you use. Of course, that varies, but I think one of the big things to convey is that it's not, you're just basically prompting yourself. You've rehearsed this talk enough, you know what you're talking about, and you're not going to be, wedded to the word, right? So if you do trip up or stumble on something, you just keep going on. So I do think that, creating the slides is important, but also rehearsing and delivery and really thinking about what you want to convey in every slide and for a limited amount of time is definitely key.
Okay, I'll really mix it up here. This is unorthodox order, right? Okay, fonts, consistency. You want consistency, right? You can be artistic, but you want some sort of consistency. Now, one thing that I've seen people do, and it really makes the search committee feel as though the applicant has put time and effort into this particular job talk, and that has to do with the color scheme, or even the use of an university logo or an institution logo that is specific. Some things such as placing a date on a slide. That conveys the audience that what you are doing and saying and sharing was tailored for this position. That it's not just a job talk that I've prepared and I am going to spout out at 10 of my next 10 interviews. So that's just another minor thing to think about.
Kind of going along with color scheme, I know some people will choose the colors of the university or institution to put in their PowerPoint. My advice is that we're all human and we overlook errors and typos and things like that. So have multiple people look at your PowerPoint, just the PowerPoint itself, not your presentation necessarily, and ask them, does it look legible? Can you read it? Does it seem consistent? And then practice your going over your presentation. You might think, well, I know this material very well, but rehearsing exactly how you're going to say things on the slides. And, I know in my interviews that, just going over it multiple times by myself, timing myself, making notes, things like that are very helpful as well in preparing.
Yes, we've already established that this is really important, right? This may be kind of like, a dramatically game-changing event in your career development. So in that sense, you don't want to take anything for granted. And you would like to communicate that, you prepared for this. You're absolutely professional, right? You're on top of your game and you don't have typos or grammatical errors, nothing. Don't overdo animations and things like that because, they may come across as not professional, but also distractive. So also remind yourself that this is going to be like a pilot teaching show for you, right? You're actually demonstrating your teaching skills. Because if you deliver a really poorly put together job talk, they may think they're like, wow. So they want to see you how you may look like in the classroom setting, right? The dynamics that you use, your style, teaching style, right? If I were you, I wouldn't read my job talk because I've seen a couple of those and that's, to me, suicidal, right? It's a job talk, right? Because if you cannot talk about your own research, right, what are you going to do when it comes to teaching complex materials? So in that sense, you have to absolutely dominate it and you have to show that, you are prepared to take this job, right? You're a good teacher, right? You also, you know how to use technology in classroom, etc. And also be prepared for unexpected. For example, at my job talk at UNLV, the projector died, it broke down, and we had to move to a different classroom, and then they had technical difficulties. And I was supposed to survive it, but I also was supposed to show composure, right? You can't just melt down, you can't just freak out, right? These things happen. Also make sure that, you have multiple copies, physical copies, online copies. Like I said, anything can happen, technology fails. Again, consistency in terms of font, slides, everything looks good. I would also have some potential questions, because time, also stay on time, because if you're allotted 40 minutes and if your talk goes like 75 minutes, that's really bad, right? Because you can't manage your own time. So that also communicates, information about you as an academic. So in that sense, make sure that, you practice. I remember giving 3 mock talks, and I'll give you one anecdote. I know that I'm using more time. Sorry, penalize me for this in the next round or skip me. But I think this is important. When I actually gave a job talk, mock talk, somebody pointed me to something really minor, trivial, that I would have never taught. So because I was like frantically using the laser pointer, somebody yelled at me and said, like, stop doing crazy stuff with the laser point. Just point to text, press, let it go. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that I was doing that. See, I mean, even simple things like that make a difference in your role. So again, practice, ask for feedback, and this is your one shot. Remember, you can't bump this. You have to be your top game and have extra slides just in case people can ask you questions that you didn't cover during your presentation. I usually leave one slide, empty blank slide, right? Then if somebody pulls a question, I'm like, aha, I'm prepared for that question too. Let me get to my slides. This is all.
So I had something to add. Dr. TC gave an excellent example. What I was going to say, when we're talking about flow and timing yourself and practicing, keep in mind you could be interrupted by a question, which could send you off in some point, or you could have your slide projector break down and you have to physically move. Yeah, right. But the other thing that I wanted to add of importance here is that you are presenting information that you are the expert on. But keep in mind, likely 90 to 95% of your audience know nothing about what you're talking about. So be careful in the terminology that you use, and perhaps even the depth of detail that you get into when you're presenting the topic that you're the expert on, right? Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah. Yes. Excellent.
I was just going to add to the backup. So I had a situation in an interview for myself where the technology, we had some issues with it. So, and I do conference presentations a lot, and my research is video analysis. So audio is extremely important. So my mentor always carries around a portable speaker with her when she travels, because she's had so many times, because it's so important to her research, right? But I would suggest, I always print off, and this may be kind of older, more traditional, printed copies of my PowerPoint slides. So let's say everything goes out. Worst case scenario, you're in the dark, you're outside. I don't know. You have those to hand out so people, and you can see them, they can see them. If you're used to just using the cloud, don't rely on internet. Internet could easily not be reliable. So I carry an external hard drive with me that has everything that is saved in my life on, and I have it backed up on the web, and I have, so I think that's also a good piece to know. You're thinking of other things. You want to be yourself, you want to be professional, but you want to be comfortable. If you're a female and you don't normally wear heels, don't wear heels like that. Those little things that you would normally think about can trip you up in the moment, right? So, even what you wear, and, make sure you have your own water. Because what if, you're speaking a lot and you need something to drink? They may not have thought to bring you a bottle of water, or there may not be any water. These little things that you know about yourself that will make you feel more comfortable, make sure that you have those in place and that you're prepared for those things. So they may seem like small things, but it can really help put you at ease and help you be prepared. So when the technology goes out, you're like, oh, well, I've got handouts, and you go around and you pass around handouts. Be flexible. It's not if you trip up or something goes wrong, it's how you handle that situation in an interview. So if you are prepared, and if you are, okay, well, let's just do things this way instead. That will let them know that on the job, if things come up, which they will, that you're able to adapt. And I think that's very important too.
If I may interject very shortly, Nev. Yeah, I think both Sarah and Jen, they made excellent points, but I want to add, it would be actually wise to reach out to the department who's organizing the visit and everything, and ask for details about your schedule and everything, but also details of the composition of your audience. Like how large is the room, what kind of technology they're going to be using, what software, because I see a lot of time people use, for example, Macintosh, and then we transition to PC. So you have a lot of issues with your PowerPoint. Make sure that you understand also composition, whether undergrad students are going to be in the audience, or is it just going to be grad students and faculty from the department, or is it just open to public? Then kind of caliber your language. Yeah, I can give you an example. One of the speakers had actually asked the audience if the audience knew about like an introduction to anthropology kind of question that was insulting. People were like really annoyed. See, I mean, you don't want to go too high, but you don't want to go too low, insulting the intelligence of your audience. You have to just use the just correct level of engagement in terms of terminology. And also, to Sarah's point, I also remember one of the top 3 candidates from an Ivy League school, one of the finalists. He wasn't wearing socks, and a lot of people were just talking about that. See, I mean, and you don't want people to talk about your socks, right? It's just self-inflicted. It's a self-inflicted wound, right? You don't want to look like a homeless person. And I would be always on the conservative safe side, and I would overdress because I also remember one of the finalists. People didn't recognize him because they thought that he was just like a random homeless person from the street walking around, but he was the finalist because the way he dressed was also received poorly. So again, your field's etiquette. Just stick with your field's etiquette in terms of what is the expected and respected norm in terms of engagement and all of this. So Sarah is absolutely right. All of these little seemingly trivial details will combine to generate the verdict about your candidacy.
So I have something.
Go ahead.
No.
I was just going to add to the socks. It's true. Whether you like it or not, they're going to be looking at you, and not to make you feel self-conscious, but they will. We had a candidate once that wore like yoga pants and a blazer. And I mean, you think, and again, dressing appropriate. And what that message was that it didn't seem like that person was really taking the interview seriously. Because the way that they were dressed. And so I remember that. I don't remember the name or any of the other details, but I just kept thinking, she's wearing yoga pants. Like, that's interesting, like, to an interview. And you don't want those things to be kind of the last thoughts. The other thing is, like, things that you might say. We had a candidate once that just kept saying something like, that's a very interesting question, and then would answer the question. And it got really annoying. And like by the end, it was just like you didn't want to ask the person any questions because they just kept saying, well, that's a really interesting question. Almost like it was, it was rehearsed. But it was very odd because they said it every single time. So little things like that just to be aware of during the interview process. Sorry, Janet, you can go ahead.
No, this is something a little bit off topic, but I think a message that you need to hear. We're talking about the job talk, but we've talked about the whole interview experience. These things are fatiguing, so you will be tired. So not only do you want to practice your job talk, make sure you have your own water and all that sort of stuff, but you want to come into this experience rested. Okay, and I was just recalling in my own mind as I was sitting here, the last interview I went on some years ago, I worked all day. I have a full-time job. I worked all day. I flew halfway across the country, got to the hotel about, 12:30 a.m. Well, no, it was probably about 11 p.m. And obviously went to sleep right away. Tried to go to sleep. At 12:30 a.m., the fire alarm started going off and these flashing LEDs. And they eventually stopped. And certainly I looked outside. There were no fire trucks or anything. So try to go back to sleep. Half an hour later, starts again. And this went on until 3 a.m. every half hour. And it was this blinding LEDs and this piercing noise. And then you're up in a different time zone, 3 hours early, trying to get through this day. So that's why you want to come in physically prepared, mentally prepared, and fully rested. And you will be tired at the end of the day.
Right. Another thing, just to kind of tip, if you get the opportunity to fly to your interview, which I assume for most of you by the time you interview, We had a colleague that came and decided to check his bag, and all of his clothes and everything for the interview was in his bag. Now, the difficult thing is this person was a very tall individual, and he couldn't just go to the store and easily find clothes. So that made it even more challenging. So my advice, if you get on a flight, I know this sounds really odd, but have everything with you. Like, don't check a bag. That just seems like a very bad, and you would think that would have been something to think about, but he ended up wearing his jeans and he had to go out and get a shirt, but he couldn't find all the clothes to fit him. So it was like, anyways, and then it makes you really frazzled too, because you're not prepared. It looks like you weren't prepared or you didn't plan ahead. So, but the light thing, that's a really interesting story, Tina. Yeah.
I was just going to add idiosyncrasies that we have, and just making sure that we're wearing socks with loafers and all of those little things, our laser pointers. One of the best things that really helped me as I was getting ready for those cross-country interviews who would give you the more you can do that, the more they can identify ways you can improve, and also empowers you to move forward. So if you don't already have that in your program, find some people that are going on job talks and partner with them. Maybe have those types of events in your programs.
Thank you all. So as we are talking about giving the actual talk, we know it's important to engage your audience and use body language and eye contact when we're in person, but how can we reimagine and produce the same energy in a virtual platform, especially now that those type of platforms may be more common for job talks?
You probably don't have to do what we're all doing, which is just sitting. There's nothing that precludes you from having a space where you can, if you actually want to present yourself as you might in a teaching situation where you're walking and moving around and engaging the students, you might set up a situation in your virtual room where you can perhaps create that sort of an environment. And if it's a job talk, you probably do not want Dr. Jordan's background because this is a serious thing, right? So I will say I'm currently serving as a chair on a search committee right now, and I had met with the candidate a half an hour before the search committee meeting yesterday, and it was a virtual meeting, of course, and the candidate was at their home in this area that was totally white, just, it doesn't matter what it is. My area is white. But what they had done was, before they met with the search committee, was they actually put a potted plant in the background and then commented that, I fixed this up a little bit. I put that plant back there. So I don't know, it's just a random comment, but I think you can think about, creating the space the way you might have it in real time.
Another thing that I've been thinking about a lot, this is about 7 years ago, I actually got a job offer virtually. This was an East Coast institution. I was in the Midwest. And one of the things I did was, of course, had somebody on the other side of the camera. Because I don't know about you all, but this is pretty daunting. It's tough to really get a read on people when there aren't faces. It's a bunch of names, right? So one thing I've been thinking about is, how do you use the chat function? How do you pause to get some engagement and have people rest? Are they going to be putting things in the chat? Will they be asking questions if this is virtual? So I think practice that and kind of ferreting out how your job talk might go could be helpful too.
So to add on to that, because I do communication research, what we do know, there have been studies that shown people who are talking to a person, interactive, face-to-face, someone who is talking on the phone where they're having audio back and forth only, not visual, and then someone who's speaking into a tape recorder. Now, this is years ago. Okay, this is an old study. what they found that if there's not an audience or a perceived audience, even giving head nods, smiles, things like that, that the speaker actually becomes disfluent in their language and their talk. So I think that's a great idea. I think having, even if you can't have somebody on the other side of your computer while you're giving your presentation, have a picture, have a something to focus on, right? But it would be helpful to have some sort of interaction. Even like I said, just a nod or a head smile. It's nice that we have our videos up, but we can't see everybody's video. I know I did a small lecture for the School of Medicine, and we had the med students there, and there was only like 9 or 10 of them, but nobody had their cameras on. Nobody had their audio on. And so I started talking. I was like, wait a minute, I need some sort of feedback. I need to make sure that everybody's there. But for me to help me do my best and to make sure that it was something that was helpful for my audience, I really needed that head nod, the smile, those types of what we call generic listener cues to help me be able to deliver my information. So those are definitely really important things. And if however you can figure that out, if you can makeshift it in some ways, I would recommend that for sure.
Do you recommend putting a bobblehead on your monitor?
Anything that can give you even if it's fake, even if you have like a recording of somebody nodding their head and you just watching that, I don't know, like something it seems like would be better than nothing. But it'd be really nice if you had some way of, I'm just sitting at my desk here and I have a window. So of course you don't maybe want people in the room, but like maybe one of my family members could come out and just like, I don't know. But if I was really giving an important talk and it was, for my career, I think I could try to figure out something that would help me. Maybe my phone's on and I'm talking and they can hear me and they could at least nod. That would be helpful for me to get some kind of feedback. But it's difficult with virtual because you don't have that in person. Again, just the head nod means a lot to the speaker.
All great points. Look, it's hard, right? It's challenging, granted. But this is your new reality, new normal. So what are you going to do about it? What I would do, I would focus on the controllables, the factors that I could control. For example, I would just go out and invest in, and they're not expensive as far as I know, these like blogger kits, which comes with like those circular lights and then a good microphone, right? And then again, I'm a glass half full person. In the live version, right, you don't get to rehearse. You just get out there, deliver, right? But in this version, you have countless opportunities to rehearse this, right? Just record yourself. Give your job talk, imagining fictive audience, right? Even the bobbleheads, a mannequin, somebody or your siblings, family members, just engage with somebody, even one person. And again, and I know this from my personal experience because when we first transitioned into the frenzy of the pandemic, right? We all found ourselves in a kind of like situation to just adjust to this new normal, right? I started teaching for example, webinars, all the workshops online. And I wasn't comfortable at first because I'm not used to just looking at that little white hole, on top of your screen, right? Your monitor, and then keep talking to it. But then I just find it very easy if there's an audience, even now, right? Just look at some faces, just create that audience for yourself and then rehearse. I think it's all about demystifying the process. It's all about being conscious about your gestures, right? Your facial expression, because you don't know, right? You don't know how you look when you give a lecture. But if you record your lecture and watch it, you would be really surprised, right? The kind of things that you're doing without knowing, or the kind of things that you can control after the fact, right? Looking, right? Again, I think this may help, but this is not going to be a true substitute for the real experience. But like I said, what are you going to do? So control the environment, just have better lights, better microphone, because you don't want technical issues. Believe me, it's so frustrating for everyone. This is so consequential. And again, invest for a kit like that. Good light, good microphone, right? Confidence, effective use of body language, gestures, eye contact, and you'll get really close to the real experience. That's what I would say. prepare.
And perhaps you want to negotiate with your neighbors to ask them to retain maximum bandwidth for you for that hour of time. There are things you can't control, right?
Take them a gift and say, hey, could you not be online tomorrow from 4 to 5?
Yeah, kids, pets in the house, right? Take care of the controllable factors. Ask your, if you have a partner, ask them to just take the dog for a walk or take your kid to the park. I don't know if they cannot keep it quiet because, again, you don't want to stress about those things or you don't want to get distracted. So create like an absolutely bulletproof environment for that 1 hour or whatever the time frame.
And make sure Dr. Atisi does not start playing those drums.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And you don't want drum set maybe in your background. Fake it. Have like a wall of library or something to look more academic.
Thank you all. So our next chat question here is, what are the typical components in an academic job talk? I understand there is a presentation to present your research and teaching experience along with what you can provide for the university. But are there typically lunch and dinner or more casual meetings and hangouts? What do these more casual discussions typically involve?
Are we reshuffling the
Sure.
the sequence? Sarah, why don't you go first?
Okay. I think it depends on the institution and maybe discipline perhaps, but at least for us and what I've heard and is pretty typical across disciplines is that you usually have a couple formal presentations, like your research presentation. In our field, we usually have a teaching demonstration. So we don't want to just hear about your teaching, but we want to see it. For us, because we're therapists, sometimes we have a supervision demonstration or a theory of therapy presentation as well. So that can sometimes vary within our discipline. Yes, you'll go to at least one meal, but probably a few meals, usually dinners afterwards. And again, like Janet said, you're going to be exhausted. You may get a little break in between your interview and dropped off at the hotel and then go to dinner. Use that time to just chill and just, have some time to yourself. But usually that happens as well. Usually you'll meet with the chair of the search committee in a meeting. Usually you'll meet with the search committee themselves, the group. Usually you'll also meet with people like the dean or the chair of the department, the faculty in the department, the students. So it may vary slightly, but you will have some more, you'll be on giving a presentation, and then you'll have these other meetings where they'll be asking questions of you, and then you'll have more informal settings like lunch and dinner.
If I may go a second. Remember, job talk is part of your interview. Okay, so we call this job talk. This is focusing on job talk, but I think it doesn't make sense to separate these things, right? These are like articulated things, and I think I would characterize the job talk as the anchor, right? Because that would be the most consequential, right, performance. And remember, you're performing, right? Because you're arriving. So, for example, my interview was 3 days, right? First day, you go to the department, you meet with the search committee, then you have alone time with every faculty member, like 30 minutes. Then you meet with graduate students, right? Then you meet with the department chair. There are receptions, right? Lunch, first night reception. They usually give you like some time to recover from the trip if it's a long flight. So they may probably have the job talk placed like that to help you recover. So the second day was my job talk. I remember March 19, 2007. I remember the day. And again, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Job talk is that afternoon. And then the final day, I had a meeting with the search committee again, and also had a meeting with the dean, right, college dean, because the dean is going to make you the offer. They're going to send the letter if you get the job. So in that sense, think it like as a big package of performance, and every step is important. So you can't just focus on job talk and just don't worry about the things. No, you have to be at your best stuff every minute of it. Never take your guard down. And again, I'm very lucky because I went to a very prestigious school and there was a fantastic career office. they trained us literally on dinner etiquette. I actually attended dinner etiquette training, like a interview training with a psychologist. They actually told me, don't do this, don't do that, like don't do this, right? Body language. So again, we talked about like even what to order. So for example, they said, they told us like, don't order like anything messy like ribs. And you would think like, who orders ribs? But I gotta tell you, one of the people that we interviewed here at UNLV, and I'm not gonna name names of course, that person actually ordered ribs, and I was like, wow, actually people actually do this. And he was just like literally, it was kind of weird to watch him just eat and like chew all the bones and everything. It doesn't look pretty. So in that sense, but we discussed this. So I was lucky because I was really coming from a really informed. So I drove the process. I controlled the process. Why? Because I had the training. So that's why preparation really matters. And again, we even discussed things like, okay, you're going out for dinner and you're walking with a female colleague. Do you get the door or not? Right? Because, right? So you have to be very, very vigilant. You have to gauge every scenario. You have to be really careful, like, and again, you have to gauge. You'll have conversations. Don't go casual. Okay, don't talk politics, don't talk religion, don't talk any crazy stuff. And especially at receptions, they will offer you drinks. Don't drink. Okay, do not drink, because I've also seen people who just have like a couple of drinks and then they start cussing, they start getting too friendly. No, you're not socializing. Like every minute of it, including dinners, lunches, you're being watched. Okay, they're watching you, right? Okay, in that sense, the whole experience, whole interview is really important, because even if you ace the job talk, if you bombed in a couple of different places, you're going to lose the job, right? And I remember one of the people from one of the job talks, that person actually gave the job talk just talking to the screen the whole time, his back turned to the audience, and then cussing like, oh shit, oh shit. You go like, really? I mean, don't you get any training? Seriously, it doesn't matter. Even if you're brilliant, you're not going to get a job because, you don't conduct yourself professionally. So in that sense, I, dressed with the tie and red blazer, and people always ask me like, like, why don't you relax? Why don't you? I said, look, thanks, I'm fine. Why don't you have a drink? Thanks, I'm fine, right? Again, you have to be really, really conscious. Watch everything you say. Every conversation can matter. And also learn your material. I mean, I remember people coming in asking me about like, who's the department chair? You're gone. And people coming and complimenting my work on some fish in Alaska. I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm not your guy. I don't do that, right? So you have to learn. I remember studying, I flew from Boston to Las Vegas, 5+ hour flight. I remember almost like internalizing every faculty member's publications. I read their publications, recent journal articles, so that I could have meaningful conversation. I read your Journal of Archaeological Science paper. It's great, right? Or, the department chair, the department culture. Look at the department's websites. Even it's going to give you a lot of ideas. For example, if the faculty are organized alphabetically, that's one scenario. If they are organized by rank, full professors, that you're going into a hierarchical department, right? By discipline, right? Same department by, say, chemistry, inorganic chemistry. So they have divisions, right? Subdivisions. So you should do your homework. You should be prepared.
I would agree that I wanted to add one thing about the drinking, because people always ask that question, should I drink? And number one, they're going to be watching you. Okay. Number two, you shouldn't have too much. But in some disciplines, I've heard if you are a drinker and everyone else is drinking and you say no, that can sometimes come across a certain way as well. So I would be aware of that. But definitely, if you do drink, if that's the culture and everybody's drinking and don't have even a full drink. I would drink like a half a drink or one. Like you want to err on the side of caution. You do not want to. Another story, we had a candidate come and they took this candidate, another institution, to dinner. And she ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. So be aware of price. And then she said, oh yeah, why don't we get a bottle of wine? Let's get this one, the most expensive bottle of wine. And almost everyone at the table was either in recovery because she was interviewing for a position in alcohol abuse and recovery, or they didn't drink. And she basically ordered the bottle for herself. Anyways, these little things, right, that you want to be, what is the culture? Like if nobody else is drinking, don't order the drink. If everyone is drinking, maybe have a sip or two and that's it, right? So you're accommodating to that culture.
So I can't agree more that you
My
need to
bad.
be,
Has been a little shaky.
you need to be prepared. You need to know the environment you're coming into. And one piece that you may be asked that we haven't talked about at all, especially if you're going to an R1 institution, and you have equipment needs, you need to have your list of what you need to be successful. It's called a startup list, and in that list might include financials for instrumentation. It might be software. It might be student support, guaranteed graduate student for X number of years while you set up your lab. And it's very possible that the dean will ask you, what do you need as a startup? So be sure you take care of that piece. Some of the other things that might occur on the whole picture type thing is they might set you up with a realtor and you might go driving around the area. You may meet with someone in the research office, somebody in the vice president for research office, or you may view, if you do animal research, you may go to the IACUC facility, the particular facility. So it depends upon what you're interviewing for. I'll shut up so that Jeremy can add.
Oh, my bandwidth has been sketchy. In the role, even as for assistant professor positions, I met with the provost and president of the small schools, and I think one of the key things to do is have recurring questions that what you need to know.
It is. Yeah, it is an excellent point that Jeremy's trying to get out here. Sorry for your bandwidth, but there's nothing wrong with asking the same question of 5 different people. That's what you're trying to say. I get that. You want to get a sense of consistency of the response.
And have a question. We had one candidate once, we asked them questions at different points in the interview and they said, no, I'm good. I don't have any questions. That did not go across well to the search committee because they thought, well, do they just not care? Do they just, so even if you've asked the same question to someone else in a different context, it's okay to reuse. I had a list of questions, like possible questions for students, possible questions for department chair, because they're going to be different depending on your audience, possible questions for the search committee. So if you have those, that way you always have a question available. That shows you're engaged, that you're invested. And a lot of times your questions reflect the research that you've done on the institution or the program or department. You would only ask those questions if you understood how things were. If you've had a change of both the positions that I applied for, there had been a change in terms of the program moving from one department to the next. I had questions about that. I had questions about what it was like in the new department. And so that way they knew that I knew the history of that program.
So this kind of leads into another question a participant just asked, asking, as a committee member on a search, are there any questions that you expect from a candidate?
You might ask questions relative to, at least contemporarily now, diversity and inclusion environment on campus. You might ask about interdisciplinary projects, teaching, research. What is the climate like? There's a couple of different types of things you might ask. You might ask some questions relative to expectations as an assistant professor if you're coming into a tenure track line, relative to research productivity, grant procurement, internal and or external. How are you going to be judged? What is the level of performance, the expectation there?
Being a communication researcher, we stress the importance of assumptions in your question. So questions are not neutral. When you ask a question, there's something behind it. For example, you ask the question, a good question to ask perhaps would be, tell me about opportunities to collaborate, not only within the program and the department. That's assuming that you're interested in collaborating with people in the program, the department. That gives them information. So just remember that your questions are not neutral, that they have assumptions behind them. And so carefully thinking that's a great one. Also, what are you looking for in a new faculty member? So as a search committee, I would want them to ask questions about my commitment, longevity to the program, what I can offer, ways that I'm going to work with other people. That's very important, especially for grants, is that you collaborate among disciplines. Those are the types of questions that I would look for.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
I agree with everything said. Of course, it depends on your position, right? Because if you're interviewing for a, say, teaching position, that's a different story. If you're interviewing for an R1 school with, a three-front job description, that's a different story. So as I say, tenure track assistant professor, right? I would like to know, right? You must actually gain a really good understanding of how you're going to be evaluated, right? What are the expectations? So the role of research, teaching, and service, especially for new establishing junior faculty, these are really important, right? Because if they expect you to serve in, say, really demanding, time-consuming areas, right? That may impact your, for example, Department of Anthropology at UNLV, that was my home department. It really had a great culture because they said, we usually accommodate junior faculty so that they can focus on their research, right? So try to understand those, and also try to understand what other sources they have toward junior faculty development, right? Departmental sources, college, university, right? Our university is just enacting again for, right, seed money for junior faculty only, right? Because before you get out there to compete for external competitive grants, you might need, right, time to establish your research. So you could use actually university funds to establish your research. So you want to know where those resources exist. Another thing, if you're going into a research environment, right, it's going to be very important for you to understand how are you going to compete with senior faculty in terms of graduate school student recruitment, right? Again, this is a symptomatic problem at UNLV, number of GAs allocated to departments from the university, right? But there's a distinguished professor in your program, right? That person may receive 40, 50 applicants every year and then get 5 students and they are all funded, and you're not going to be able to compete with that professor, right? So you want to know whether there are internal mechanisms to actually protect and support junior faculty. And I'm happy that, for example, anthropology actually adopted that. And we said, junior faculty, untenured faculty are entitled to GA, right, without competing. Things like that, right, because they're going to be important. I mean, remember, landing the job is important, but then the minute you have the job offer, you're going to be like, yes, my life is good now. No, right, because now you're going to have to get tenured, right? So that was actually my realization. Oh, I finished my PhD. Oh, now I got to find a job. I got a job. Now I need to get tenured, right? So in that sense, so you have to actually, this is a two-way street. I think Janet really beautifully referred to it, right? They're looking at you, but you're also looking at it, because you don't want to end up in a place which is not prone to, which is not going to be the best environment for you to thrive, right? So it could be a dead end, or it could be an environment where you cannot be productive, right? Because of these, say, institutionalized inequalities. It's a game of power, remember. Money, resources, graduate students, teaching. Also ask whether you're going to be able to teach the classes you want, or the department will dump on you all the 101s, 102s, 103s, right? That's really important to understand. Or whether you're going to have an internal mentor in your department, senior person who's going to help you navigate this really rugged terrain, right? To understand, especially, I would really ask, find success for tenure explicitly. Are there an expected set number of publications annually? Because some departments, they say, we want to see 3 peer-reviewed articles in these high-impact journals, right? Versus, no, right, you're fine, right? So understand the culture, understand, because again, these are going to be all very, very consequential for you down the road, because you get the job, but if you don't get tenure, then that's self-destruction. Just really, you want to know what you're getting into. Yes, I agree with Sarah. You will need and want a mentor.
Thank you all. So I'm looking at the time here, and unfortunately, we're out of time for today's panel. But before we wrap up, I would like to give a huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and providing us with really great advice on this very important topic. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you. And let everybody know that if they have further questions, I am personally available to discuss, to help, to just talk further. This is important service. Thank you for organizing this.